Welcome to the RFP Success Show with host Lisa Rehurek, the #1 sought-after authority on RFP success. Each week, we bring you information, strategies, or resources to help you win more business through RFPs and have a little fun doing it. Let's get this week's episode started.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the RFP Success Show. This is Lisa Rehurek, your host. As usual, I'm founder and CEO of the RFP Success Company, and always here to provide insight, strategies, tips, tools for you to improve your win percentage when responding to RFPs. And today we're going to have a little bit of a rant because we've had so many people come to us over the past, I'd say 60 days, looking for help because they've got this RFP on their desk and they really want to bid on it and it's perfect for them, but it's been sitting on their desk for like 30 days, or in one case, it had been sitting there for almost 6 weeks, and there was 1 week left to bid. And I'm here to tell you, I always have a really hard time saying no to that because I really want to help you all, but you can't win if you are going to respond in 1 week. And all of your competitors have had 5 or 6 weeks to respond. You just aren't going to have the upper hand. Why put yourself through that? So what I want to talk about today is how you can get ahead of this and stop waiting until the last minute, because I know it's really easy to push these aside, but it is brutal if you wait that long. If you think about putting a puzzle together, and let's pretend that you have 10 minutes to finish putting the puzzle together and you just start putting pieces wherever and fitting them in where they don't really go, that is exactly what it's like and what you're going to end up doing. And you're going to have this crooked puzzle that is all crammed together and doesn't make any sense. So please stop doing that. Stop. So what we're going to talk about today is, again, what can we do on the front end? How can we have a better process so that we are not doing that anymore? Okay, here's the thing. You generally in an RFP have 3 to 8 weeks to respond. That's the range I see. 3 weeks if it's not a huge heavy lift, and then 8 weeks for the heavier lift. Every now and then you're going to see something outside of that range, but for the most part, that's the average range. And the real average that we see is 5 to 6 weeks. That's the sweet spot, 5 to 6 weeks. So depending on how large the response is, here's what you need to think about. You need time on the back end to do all the appropriate reviews, edit the document, format the document, all of which takes time. We're going to walk through that. And so this is the piece that people miss. They think, oh, well, it's just going to take us. We can crank out a response. We can write to something in a week. That's no problem. We have a whole bunch of material from prior responses, or, we have all this material. We just need to pull it all together in a week is enough time. All good and well, but it's not enough time. So here's what you have to think about. I want to talk about the things that people underestimate, mainly because you don't have experience doing it. And it's really easy to sit back and go, hey, administrative assistant, can you edit and format this in the next 2 hours? Or wait a minute, we're going to give you a whole day to do this, and underestimate how long that kind of stuff takes. So unless you've done it before, you don't know. So if you're going to judge, honestly, I recommend that you get in there and do it yourself one time. As a matter of fact, I have a client who had a subject matter expert that had to actually go on site to do production because we were running up against it because everybody procrastinated. We were running up against the deadline. So we sent a couple people to the city in which this needed to be in to produce it there. And they were in a different office. And the subject matter expert got there and he got a feel for what it's like to do production. And he said to us, I will never again miss another writing deadline. Because most of the time the subject matter experts have no idea what it takes to pull something like this off. So here are the things that people underestimate because they don't really understand how long it's going to take. The first thing is all of the proper reviews. And this is before we get to editing, but more like the consulting review or the technical review or the subject matter expert review, whatever that looks like. And there's generally a couple of different types of reviews. There's that technical review where the subject matter experts are reviewing it to make sure that everything that's stated throughout the document is correct. And then there's also generally an executive review, or, I work with a lot of consulting companies, and so we call it a consulting review. It is the high level executive, kind of I usually call it the sponsor, whoever is sponsoring that RFP response, they should be reviewing it. And maybe it's a salesperson, the sales executive, to make sure that you're showcasing everything correctly, that you're speaking to the problem, that the differentiators are all included, yada, yada, yada. So there's got to be somebody internally that reviews it. So those reviews take some time. Not only do they take some time, but those need to be pre-scheduled to make sure that those people's schedules is clear and they can get those done. Here's a hidden piece that people miss all the time is once those reviews are done, you've got to build in some time to update the document after those proper reviews. And I'm here to tell you, most of the time those reviews come back, there's outstanding questions. They'll say, I'm not sure this is correct. You need to check with so-and-so. I'm not sure this is correct. Do we really mean what we're saying here? And so it's not just about going in and making the changes. It's also sometimes about doing some research and making some phone calls and talking to people. That takes time. All right, so let's just say we give 3 days for that, okay? That's like, 1 day for the reviews, another day for answering questions and research, and a third day to pull all of that together and have it all succinct, and maybe somebody wants to look at it again. So that's 3 days right there. Then we got to talk about editing the document. So this is where the poor administrative assistant generally gets it, or you don't have an administrative assistant and you grossly underestimate the need to have somebody edit the document. Here's the rule of thumb. It takes 15 to 60 minutes per page to edit a document. Now I think 60 is too much. That's probably a little bit more like somebody's editing for content, and at this point, this is probably more editing for editorial type stuff. But if we take the minimum 15 minutes, let's say you have a 50-page response, it's going to take at minimum 12 hours for a really good editing job. 12 hours. And that's generally somebody that's not going to do 12 hours in a row. So now you're talking about 2 days. All right. So now we're up to 5 days. All right. Just for reviews. Then guess what? There's formatting, which also takes a significant amount of time. And I'd also say 15 minutes, maybe 10 minutes per page. And this all depends on how jacked up the formatting is. The more fingers in the pot, the longer the formatting is going to take. Okay? So that stuff takes long. Word can be wonky. Headings, footers, section breaks, colors, bullets, all of that kind of stuff. And again, unless you've been in there, people are like, oh, you just press a button. No, it doesn't really work that way. So the more jacked up it is, the more fingers in the pot, the longer the formatting will take. So even if we conservatively say that's going to take a day, still working in this 50-page document, all right, we're up to 6 days. Now let's talk about production. If you have to send an email, beautiful, that makes it really easy, right? But if you've got to send it hard copy, now you've got to work in a few more days because production takes time. And it's not just production, but generally you've got to do cover pages and you've got to do tabs, and all of which, by the way, should be prepared way in advance. But nonetheless, you've got all of that, depending on how big the document is. You've got to produce it. Also depends on how many copies you've got. But then you've got to do a final look. And I guess you don't have to, but I would highly recommend a final look because copy machines are ripe for mistakes. And so even though you put in a perfectly ready document, sometimes out comes something wonky. Or I don't know how many times that it's looked really good on the screen. We print a copy, we start to produce it, and then we realize, oh crap, there's a weird page break or the page numbers are wrong or something. So I'm going to actually back up for a minute. Before you go to production, you should actually do a final look through of the one you're going to copy to make sure everything looks good. Go to production. Do a final look of every copy that you've made to make sure the copy machine hasn't messed anything up. And then there's delivery. Whew, I told you I was going to be on a little bit of a rant, and I know I'm talking fast. But then you got to go think about delivery. So if you're delivering it the day before and you've got to ship it, don't just ship it one way because UPS and FedEx make mistakes. Don't get things there in time, yada, yada. So in a perfect world, you actually ship it 2 days in advance. So now, we're up to about 10, 11 days. So we're talking 2 full weeks unless you're blessed enough to have somebody that's going to be working on the weekend, but I will tell you, all of those people on the back end are generally not the ones that work on the weekend. You are the one that works on the weekend. The business owner or the proposal manager or all of that, maybe are the ones that work on the weekend, but the administrative staff, the production staff don't always work on the weekends. So I always say that you need to give it 2 weeks on the back end in order to really put out a great proposal. And come on, you guys, if you're going to respond to RFPs, why would you not want it to be a great proposal? You want to be competitive. You want to give yourself every chance you can to be able to win. So 2 weeks on the back end, all right? And then on the front end, you're probably going to lose a week. I wouldn't say lose a week, but let's just say we're working with a 5-week time frame, okay? On the front end, what I suggest that you do is, you've got to hit the ground running right away, because that first week is going to be sucked up with, maybe you don't get it on the first day, maybe you get it on the second day. Somebody's got to, go through and assess it. Then you've got to pull together your team of people. You've got to pull together your response calendar, your template, and then get a kickoff meeting. I always suggest doing all of that in the first week, but that is going to eat up the first week. We've already eaten up 2 weeks on the back end. So guess where you're at? You have 2 weeks to pull together the writing, and not just the writing, but all of the pieces of the puzzle, the financials, reviewing the terms and conditions. If you've got partners or subcontractors, that makes it even more difficult. You've got to get resumes. You've got to fill out forms, get signatures. There is a lot that has to be done in those 2 weeks. So now you see how this starts getting shorter. You don't have enough time to sit around with a stack of RFPs on your desk, ignoring them until next week, which then becomes next week, which then becomes next week. You're not going to bid, or you're going to bid crap, you're going to lose, and you're going to waste time and money. So this means you need to get on the ball when that RFP comes in. Here are some tips for developing a process on the front end that helps you get that as quickly as possible. First of all, have a solid monitoring process, okay? So I would use a monitoring service always. FindRFP.com is really inexpensive. It's like $30 a month, I think. You can put in your keywords. There's another one that's more expensive but a little bit more robust called BidSync, BidSync.com, BidSync, and have those monitoring services in place. Also, for your key targets, the companies, the entities, and by the way, those monitoring services only work for government. They don't work for the private sector. So wherever you have to go or whoever your targets are, your main targets, you need to be on their list to receive RFPs. Whether it's a corporation, sometimes they've got a way to do that. Maybe it's just a person that's emailing out. Governments, you can go to the specific entity, whether it's state, local, municipality, sign up to get their notifications. So have all of that in place. I also suggest having a very specific mailbox, email mailbox, set up to receive those notifications. Because if you've got it going to one particular person, if they quit, if they leave the company, if they're out sick, if they're out for an afternoon, that's time taken away. When you've got a separate email mailbox, you can give permission to several different people to have access to that mailbox. And then you need to have a solid process in place. So who is the one person responsible for that? And when they can't do it, who is their backup? Actually, if you rely a lot on RFPs, I'd have 2 people in your organization assigned to monitor it. So that's a really great best practice. The other thing you can do is provide incentives. So for anybody that finds an RFP that you end up bidding on, they get, say, $50 or something, or they get a gift card to Amazon or Starbucks or something like that. And it makes it a little bit competitive. People get excited. It gets, especially if you've got more than one person monitoring that mailbox, this gives them a really great kind of competitive thing going on. We've maybe got 3 people that have access to that. Whoever finds the RFP and we bid on it, you get the incentive. It just gets people excited, and again, competitive environment. So those are kind of some great ways that you can have that monitoring up front. If you use interns, or if you're open to using interns, that's a really great thing for interns to do. and just getting everybody involved and understanding the business development process. Then when that RFP is found, you've got to act on it quickly and make quick decisions. Thus the importance of assessment criteria that I am always on my soapbox about. You've got to have solid criteria that works within your organization. This also, the person that receives the RFP, you can also have them, you can easily train them on how to assess an RFP when you've got really solid assessment criteria. And you can set your assessment criteria up to give you a grade. So let's say anything that gets over 80% is an automatic yes. Anything that gets under 60% is an automatic no. And anything between 60 and 80, there's a team of people that need to have a discussion about it. And the great thing about having that assessment criteria is that generally the first thing on there is, where are the potential deal breakers? And I have to tell you that this is something that people don't pay attention to. It's another one of my pet peeves, because what will happen is I will say, are you confident you can meet all the requirements of this RFP? People will say yes, they engage us. And then a week and a half into this, we find something that they say, oh yeah, we can't do that. Or we don't have financial statements like that. Or we can't do the proposal bond, or whatever that looks like. And we have to stop. And you've wasted money on us because we've done work. We're not giving you that money back. You have wasted time and money thus. So you want to make sure that you read through the RFP completely and really highlight anything that is a sticking point or a deal breaker. And that's part of that assessment criteria. And then make that quick decision within a day. You should try to make that decision, because again, in that first week, when that RFP hits the streets, in that first week, you should decide whether you're bidding, assemble the right team, create the response calendar, create the template, and get a kickoff meeting going with your key response team members. All of that has to happen in that first week to give you the time that you need to put together the response you deserve to submit. Okay. Now, I know if you're on a proposal team, you are probably used to this process, but if you've got people in your organization that sit around and dilly-dally for a couple weeks and then throw it on you and say, hey, go make your magic happen, I know that's got to piss you off, right? So feel free to share this podcast with them. But everybody in the organization has to have respect for the timeline. And if they don't have respect for the timeline, you're going to have a losing culture, just plain and simple. So put these very simple things into place. Make it a priority, because this is business. This is money in your pocket. This is revenue, or it's loss of revenue if you're waiting too long, because again, people and resources, time, all of that messes with your bottom line revenue. So, okay, rant over. I hope that, if you're listening and you've got a challenge with this, that you'll heed my advice and really get some monitoring going and make sure that you get those quick decisions going so you can get going on your response right away. Okay, everybody, thanks for listening. We always appreciate you being here. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. We also love reviews. So whichever format that you listen to this on, if you're enjoying the podcast, I would love it if you spent a little bit of time just giving us a quick review. That would be greatly appreciated. Again, I'm Lisa Rehurek. You've been listening to the RFP Success Show, and we'll hear you back here on the next one.
You have been listening to the RFP Success Show with RFP expert Lisa Rehurek, author of the RFP Success book. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, make sure you click the subscribe button so you don't miss a show. And thanks for spending time with us today.